Welcome to the Scope Unmuzzled podcast, episode 10, actually. So we reached 10, for God's sake. I didn't really think we would get this far, but we did it. Hopefully we'll get another 10 and another 10, and who knows. It's not like the company Valve, who can't count to the 3. I was afraid that I might not be able to count to 10 because I actually did not bring out the fucking 10th episode of the compilation, but whatever. Anywho, we have 2 new guests in this podcast. One is Aki, one is Devon. And we have, as always, a podcast with 2 people. So these are actually 2 new guests. We don't have a recurring guest this one. That might become later. Who knows? As always, you can follow us on SoundCloud. You can subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. And we'll keep doing these video podcasts because people like them. So, and I have to edit these. And it's a pain. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You guys don't have to see any of that. We're going to start this. And then we will be talking about some cool topics. So let's start. Welcome to the podcast. So today we have 2 new guests. We have no recurring guest this time. We have Aki and we have Devon, and they will join this podcast. They've actually not talked to each other for quite a while. So it's kind of like a reunion moment because I haven't talked to Aki in a while. I haven't talked to Devon in even longer. They haven't talked to each other for a while. So we can kind of catch up on things, on life, and discuss some stories that we have. It'll be fun. So with that, I would like to ask the guest to introduce himself, starting with Devon. Please go ahead.
Hello, I'm Devon. I'm 23. I live in the United States. My hobbies are linguistics, and do a lot of D&D as well as a dungeon master.
Mm-hmm. That's nice. It seems like you're a bit nervous as a linguist to come out of your words. Is that correct?
Well, I'll let you know. This is the first podcast I've ever been on. Mm-hmm. So
it's fine. It's like any conversation you have with a person. You don't have to sweat it. You can just say whatever. This is not like completely censored and you can't say swear words. You can say fuck if you want. Just not in the first, was it like 18 seconds of a YouTube video? We already covered that. So we are past that landmark. So you are free to say whatever you want. Anything else to add to that?
That should be a good starter, I think.
All right. Okay. Then, Aki, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Aki. I am from the United States. I am almost 20 years old. My hobbies include figure collecting. I am an artist. I play a lot of MMOs, and I also play rhythm games. Otherwise, I just enjoy creating and all that kind of stuff.
So what kind of things do you actually create as an artist? Like, do you draw? Do you make 3D models?
I would consider myself an illustrator. I also like to work with like character design and stuff, but I'm a digital artist. I mostly do that. I do build gunpla kits occasionally and work on garage kits for like physical medium. Sometimes I paint. I used to be a painter. But otherwise I work with like digital mediums. I've been working on learning like more 3D modeling stuff, but pretty much I am a digital artist.
Okay. So that's like the broadest term of the word, because digital artist can be someone that draws using like Photoshop or some other tool. It can be 3D artist, can be someone that makes posters, that makes logos, billboard things, that make icons. Like I've done that. I've made icons for Android before, on my DeviantArt. That's also considered like a digital artist. Anything in the digital realm can be considered that. But
Yeah.
I think you have like
A digital illustrator.
Yeah, I think you have a large skill set as well, right? To really do those things.
I would consider so, yeah.
All right. Okay. So, one of the first questions I'm going to start with, and this is going to put you guys on the spot because before this, I gave you a bit of time to think about your intro. But these other questions, unless you've really watched the podcast from beginning to end, you don't know these questions. First one is, and going to start with you, Aki, because you threw Devon on the bus under the bus of the last one. How did we met? So how did you and I met, and how did you meet Devon?
That's a little bit of a tough question since I don't have like the best memory of I don't have the best memory, I'd say, of how I meet some people. I don't think I genuinely can remember how I've met the two of you guys. It probably was in like random
my God.
instances. I did meet the two of you through VR. I did meet the two of you guys through VRChat. All the VRChat, pretty much like 95% of the VRChat friends I have, I've met through VRChat. But yeah, that's pretty much. I've known Scope for. I've known you for almost 2 years, maybe.
Yeah, something like
almost 2 years. At least a year and a half. And Devon, I've known probably close to the same amount of time. We just haven't talked in a really long time. I think it was like last year that we talked, maybe.
Well, to reiterate, I do remember how I met you, Aki. You know why? Because I actually have a video of when that happened, and like in which world it was. It was in the Iris Garden, and you were in desktop.
Oh,
and then we talked about
now.
Idolmaster when we first
Iris
met.
Garden.
Yes.
Yeah, it was Iris Garden. I remember now. Now I remember when I met some of the other people.
Yes.
I remember that.
And it was funny.
My memory's jogged.
Yeah. It's funny because I remember we kind of bonded about the thing Idolmaster. So that's like a game on phones, also on PlayStation, that also became an anime. And I talked about how I got like in a small fender bender once where I actually got hit, and I was playing Idolmaster music, through the speakers of the car, kind of blasting it. I got hit. Then I was like, oh, fuck, I got hit. So I put on the hazards. I pulled over, and then make sure that the other guy also pulls over. Luckily, I have a dash cam. And the guy comes over, and I'm like, oh, I have to roll down the window, but my music is still playing. It's like, oh, fuck, I don't want him to hear this kind of embarrassing music. So I turned that down, roll down the window. It's like, oh, yeah, sorry, I made an accident. It's like, yeah. Oh, okay, let's just go check it out. And went outside to check it. Luckily, it wasn't really anything serious. It was just like a bunch of small scratches you could buff out. So it was like, whatever, and just went on our way. Yeah, there's a funny moment because that song is now cursed. As in, every time that comes on, I'm like, oh fuck, am I gonna get in another bender? Someone's gonna hit me.
I have a song that when I got in a car accident last year, and I have a song from like a Japanese like kind of rock band that I listen to a lot. It's called Unlucky Morpheus. And I was listening. I know exactly what song I was listening to when I got in my car accident in November. Because it was not like super major, but it like totaled my car and everything, so it was considered kind of major. But every time I hear major, that now, I'm reminded of that because I was listening to that when I got in a car crash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually an interesting topic, but I'll go over that later. First, Devon, do you know how you met me, and do you know how you met Aki?
I do know how I met both of you. So Scope, you are a friend of 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 mine.
No, she's sitting right. She's sitting right next to you. That's probably the person I met you through.
Yes, exactly. So I met you through Aki, and I met Aki through a mutual friend of ours. Moe. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
met him through another friend of mine who I met through a friend of mine who I went to middle school with. So sort of a
Mm.
long
It's a chain. It's like a
7
chain
degrees
And
reaction
then
of
to
middle
people.
Kevin
school.
Bacon.
Middle school happened because my
Yeah.
parents brought me there. So I met my parents at birth, and then, you can extrapolate it to all the connections eventually. But yeah, I get your point.
Yeah. But you two were some of the very first people I hung out with fairly regularly when I started getting into VR. Because I knew the friend of our mutual friend in person. And so it was our mutual friend and that person in VR. And that's when I met you. So because in the beginning, I can get into this more, but I was very socially anxious early on, and so I was not interacting with any strangers. So it was just through friends of friends that I got to know both of you.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah, that's how it kind of is with VRChat.
yeah, go ahead.
But like with VRChat, you kind of I've noticed that when I meet people in VRChat, it's kind of like a drip feed almost. Like it drips. You trickle through the friend groups and you meet people. Like I've met people even though I haven't been playing VRChat a bunch, the server that I'm in, a lot of people get invited through VRChat. So I just like it trickles down. And because like, I mean, VRChat is kind of a small world when you think about it, especially back then. And there's people that you meet and it's kind of like oh well, I've probably definitely run into you before or something. And I've had people have like oh shit moments where they realize that they've known each other from another thing or that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
I feel like VRChat is a really like small world and it just everybody like kind of drips into each other with their with their tree of friends. I actually knew someone IRL, someone I had known for like over a year. I found out was in my local rhythm game community. And it was just totally by chance. And now he's like a really good friend IRL.
Damn. Yeah, I have those moments
Yeah,
as well
if
where
I
it's a very small world that we live in. Yeah, you meet friends to friends, and it's like, oh, you know that guy? It's like, oh, I also know that guy, and then it's kind of like real life in that regard. But you would expect it to happen less because the fact that it's the internet. Like, there's everyone online. It's like all over the world, so the chance of that happening should be less, really. But I guess if you are maybe in
Yeah.
the same communities as some of these people, then you might actually, overlap.
Depends on the niche because like how depending on how niche your interests are you're going to run into people that like how niche the community is or how small you're just going to run into people are going to run into each other.
Hmm. Devon, you want to say something?
Yeah, if I were to, I could draw a tree diagram of every friend
Let's
I
not.
know in VRChat, and it's all I met this person because they're friends with this person because they're friends with this person, and if you trace it all back, there are only 3 roots. One of them is a person I know from the physical space, and
The
then
realm we
2
don't
are
talk
people I
about.
met in public worlds. Yeah, it doesn't exist. It's not real while we're here.
Exactly. Well, that's funny because there are some kind of events. Like if you would draw that tree, you could actually point out like which people are the most important in terms of like finding new friends. And well, for example, I wouldn't have met you if didn't meet Aki. And probably if I was not online at that time during that day, because pretty late, I think it was like with Akira or Missing that was there, and then you joined on desktop. I know why you got online, um, or what you were expecting at that time. But then you meet a person, and then that person introduces you to his friend group, and you meet so many more people. So if that person would not be there at that time, you wouldn't have met all these wonderful people. I hope. At least I have
It's like
met
a
a lot of
butterfly
people.
effect.
Yeah, exactly.
One domino falls. That's how I, met the people. I mean, I got intertwined with my main friend group that has been my main friend group for almost 2 years because of someone I knew IRL. I had met them online through like some like server link thing, and then I found out that I knew that they were really close IRL, like in proximity, and I met them. And then I met other people through there, and it trickled down, and I met people through there, and I just kind of went down the tree of people in that community. And now I sit where I am now at the in the my main friend group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's the friend group I spend most of my time with now. I found myself just meeting friends of friends of friends. And during that process, it felt like, oh, this is just going to keep happening. My friends list is going to keep growing, and I'll spend a little bit of time here, a little bit of time there. But then just slowly gaining friends like that, you find a group of people that you really jive well with. And it's been that way for like a year now, and I haven't moved on. So
Yeah, I kind of
You
feel
find
like
your people and you find your clique.
yeah, exactly. I kind of feel like you are like there's some people that found their clique, found their community, and then like you said, then you don't go out to public worlds to meet new people because like, oh, I already have these people. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to have a good conversation. You kind of know what to expect. But you're also kind of missing the intrigue, or like the possibility of meeting maybe even greater friends, people that might be very useful
Yeah.
for certain things in the future. And I've talked to people about that before, where they're like, yeah, maybe we should go to a public world. And then you actually go to a public world in VRChat. And then you regret your decision immediately because there's people that are just yelling, screaming,
Well-
just crashing your game, whatever. It's
Yeah. And
it's a bit
I've
difficult.
had my own experiences. Like I go into public worlds completely mute most of the time because of my experiences.
Mhm.
And, going to public instances for my friend group is like people watching pretty much. And if we want to find people, like we'll find people who have like joined maps that we frequent that are like don't really get many people because there's a steady flow of people in that community that like go to those worlds.
Mhm.
So we meet new people through that, or just sometimes we meet cool people by chance. But most of the time it's pretty much people watching because it's so that people watch because you just don't know, and as more and more users join VRChat, the climate gets more different with people, when you have like the boom of people on the quest and stuff like that. But most of the time, like the friend group that I am in is so large that we get new people introduced just because those other people have their toes in other communities, and they end up talking to us, and it just kind of like people assimilate into our group because we have so many people that we meet people through other people's friends all the time.
Yeah, so in that case,
Mhm.
they're kind of doing the work
that
for you.
way,
So they are actually bringing the friends towards you, so you don't really have to go out of your way to try and actively meet new people. But yeah, what you're saying is correct. Where I have some friends I've also had in the podcast before, where I met them in, for example, the near Automata world, the Flowers map. A lot of older or people that have been on VRChat for a while, they'll actually join these older, not really that known or popular maps because it's just a chill vibe, and the people that come there usually have a similar kind of view on life, or they're a bit older, they're a bit more experienced, or at least you know kind of what to expect when you go there. And that's also how I met you, Aki. It's true, a world that I liked a lot, and I met some cool people there. So I went there again, and then I met you, and then I met also some other people there. So that really does help.
yeah, I don't do basically any public world explorations. But I find that what I do is spend most of my time in Friends Plus worlds.
Mhm.
So friends will, and it's
Same here.
kind of like the feeling of a public world, except you don't get a lot of 6-year-olds arriving.
There's a filter. You get a filter. pretty
Yeah.
much. You don't have to worry about
Mhm.
getting
Yeah.
harassed by people all the time, and you don't have to worry about people, coming up to you and saying profane things. And it's mostly just a filter because, like, I don't like public worlds because I just get harassed in public worlds sometimes. Because when you're a girl on VRChat, it's proven time and time again that you get people that are just weird. They hear a woman's voice through the mic, and there's like one of like three reactions that you get from it. So I'm just like, I'm just not gonna speak. I can communicate with full body. I just won't speak.
Well, just for people that are not really
Yeah.
in the know of VR chat, so a public world is a world where everyone can join in the community. You don't have to have a specific friend or anything. No requirements. Well, except for the map requirements. Some maps allow Quest users, people with a Quest headset, and some maps do not, basically. So that was already going to rule out a lot of the people that are just going to play exclusively on Quest, which we'll see kids, at least from my experience. Those people eventually graduate, or whatever you want to call it, to use a link cable or something to connect it to their PC. In which case, they can go to more and different maps in the game. And then Friends Plus is because people also probably don't know the fuck that means. It's where you can join, or your friends can join in that instance, in that world, and also friends of friends can join. So as long as I think it's just one hop away from an existing friend, then they can join that instance, basically based on the person who made that instance in the first place. Is that correct?
Well, it's anyone
yeah.
who is a friend of anyone who's in the world can join.
Okay,
It's
So
basically
one
you
person
can join
start
off of
the
your friend, anyone,
instance. Yeah, and then a friend of that person, and then a friend of that friend, and then a friend of that friend of that friend. So the worlds can see a lot of people come in and out, but it tends to not get to the same level of insanity that a public world can get, because it's all
Yeah.
based on, well, you have to have some bare minimum of knowledge and connection to someone who's already here.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically a public instance for your friends list. Like it's a your friends list. Here's an instance broadcasted to your friends list for everybody in the instance. And that's kind of how like Invite Plus works a little bit, because anyone in the instance can invite people. So it's basically like free game for anyone on your friends list, depending on your status and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. All right. Well, I think that explains a bit about how we met. They've kind of went on a tangent a bit. But then the next topic would be your guys' username. So, okay, I know your username changed, I think, a bit over time. Devon, yours has not. Mine has also not changed. Could you guys explain how you came to have this username in the game? Starting with Devon.
Yeah. So don't dox me. My real name is Devon.
Holy shit, a
and,
revelation, guys. Call the police.
Oh no. Oh no.
I
Start
know where your
knocking the
location
door.
is now. Sorry.
Yep.
But I gained access to the internet in sort of the mid to late 2000s. So there was always this sort of air of be careful, don't tell strangers anything, nothing. So for a long time, I
Ignore that advice.
because I didn't interact with strangers, I just made my username my name. And then I was going to play Minecraft with some friends, and I had to make a username. And I was in a bit of a rush because we were like, we're starting the server now. And I'm like, I have to make an account. And just my name was taken.
Wait, so that was the first
So
time
I was like,
that was the first time you actually had to come up with a username on the internet?
a username that wasn't just Devon, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because Webkins didn't have a Devon there before. But so I was there. I'm like, I'm in a rush and I need a username. What do people do for usernames? I don't know. People do like their name squared, cubed. I'm Devon to the fourth. Moving on. And that split-second decision I made when I was 13 has stuck with me for the past decade. So
Is that something that you regret? Like, would you like to change it, but it's kind of stuck now because people know you by that name?
No, I have thought a lot about my username, and I gave it a lot of consideration when I was getting into VR, and I knew, okay, I'm about to meet a whole lot of new people. And I decided to keep this username. One, because I already have all the accounts and I didn't want to change it. But also, I found it's just easier for my mental load to have my real name and my username be the same thing. It was very useful recently when I met up with people in real life and they were all struggling, like, do I call you by what's on your driver's license or what's on the nameplate above your head? And that wasn't an issue for me. One name, baby.
Yeah, I guess that kind of helps. Yeah, I have that same thing where if I meet people that I met online first, I would still use their username because it just feels weird using their real name, or I just forget their real name if we meet up for like a second or third time. It's like, what's that guy called again? Fucking know. Whatever. I'm just gonna use his online name. For me, I personally respond to both. So if you would call me Scope in real life, I would respond because I've heard it so many times and I learned to react to it. So I had a similar thing where I would name myself when I was younger, just my real name and then some numbers because it wasn't unique. But then eventually I knew like, okay, maybe I should use an alias because it's the internet. You don't kind of want to separate those things and not get doxxed. So yeah, but I get where you're coming from. So what about you, Aki?
Yeah.
So my
one other thing I wanted
experience-
to
Yeah, go ahead.
say about my
yeah,
username is there is one piece I regret about it, and that is its length.
Oh, yeah.
Because my username is 16 characters. And you know what number a lot of websites like to cap their character count for usernames at?
16?
15.
It's like 8, isn't it?
Oh.
15. Oh, dude, that sucks.
Which I don't know. Can they see my nameplate? And see that at the end of it, the TH has a little slash through it. That's because that's one character that I had to pour through the Unicode documents to try and find. So I can fit the whole thing in 15 characters. So,
or you could do like 2 as like an actual 2 if you wanted to as well.
Yeah. What I usually do is I'll when I started VRChat, I fully lopped off the H. But also what I'll do is I'll do the number 4 and then TH sometimes. But this is elegant enough of a solution. So.
All right.
Yeah. So my username, I've had a weird history with usernames. I played a handful of games. I had a username when I was younger, which I will not say because it includes my real name. And I will get to why I don't use my real name online. I had that was given to me by my dad back when I was playing some games. I played a game. I played like a not exactly furry, but like an animal roleplay game called Feral Heart back in the day, and that was my username for the longest time. And I used that on other platforms and I used that on some platforms, and then I used some other kind of like furry-ish sounding. I was into like warrior cats and other stuff. So I think I had like Amber Paw something was like Amber Paw with some letters after it was a common username that I used, and some other just like animalish sounding names. I've been on like social media for quite a while, and I had some other names. I used some like kind of like idol, maybe like Love Live related usernames before. And back in like 2016, maybe I had the new username that had stuck with me for a while was Shukoshi, and it was supposed to be a combination, like a weird like combination, like spelling of a character from Idolmaster that has been my favorite for a very long time, Shuko Shiomi. So it was supposed to be kind of like that, and I kept that for a long time because she is still one of my long-running most favorite characters. But I realized I didn't really like, I had, I've been going on online. I've been going by the name Aki ever since had that username. So that's like been my longest running a lot like alias. Which I also picked the name because of another Idolmaster character actually. Um so I've had that nickname. I've had that name that I've used. I don't use my real name online because my real name's very unique and it's like very identifying, so I just don't use it at all. And people do not know how to pronounce it either for some reason. But it still is like similar in like length and short compared to my real name. But people would call me like Shu or something, and it's kind of weird getting called Shu all the time.
I was
And
there.
when I was starting to interact with when I was starting to interact with Japanese users on VRChat, it actually confused some people because it sounds like a Japanese word, like Shukoshi. I think it sounds like Sukoshi or something. It sounds like something like that. And I was like, okay, I need to change this. So I wanted to keep the Aki, so in other names where I can't, like, because some social media has like, oh, you can put a username, but you can put like what you're called by in your bio or in like its own separate name tab. And I had I ended up, it was kind of like a spur of the moment thing because I wanted to like finally change my name on like one of my social media platforms. And a running joke for a little bit was that I used to go to like some local like Super Smash Bros tournaments in real life, and I use the name Aki for an alias because that's what I've always used. And the announcer got on over on the intercom, the announcer, and he's like, a key, go to station whatever. So the guy couldn't even say Aki, right? And I had that turned into a joke in a Discord server, and for years I have had this role in this Discord server, and I was called keychain. I was called like a keychain because it was a joke because my name wasn't being said right. And my
Nice.
boyfriend of all people, he had joined that server way after, and he saw the username and he started jokingly like calling me keychain. And then like spur of the moment, I realized when I was making a new username for one of my socials that I could like combine the two and like a keychain, and it just kind of like clicked. It just happened like spur of the moment one day and it clicked, and I have used it ever since. And it's all thanks to some guy at a Smash tournament who didn't say Aki right, and my boyfriend calling me keychain for a while just for shits and giggles. And now I've landed on Aki chain. So my other usernames are buried. I've gone by some other usernames because I used to like stream and all that, but pretty much Aki chain was like what is like the thing that I have finally stuck with and the thing that I prefer to be called. And it's funny because a lot of people call me Aki in real life in like some local communities. Like I tell people my name IRL, but like people still just call me Aki, and all the people I hang out with IRL still call me it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's weird that people call you your real name, or are you fine with that?
No, I'm fine with it. I mean, I prefer like I would like to like some other people like IRL to say my name, but like they just say Aki, and I'm so used to hearing it all the time because I'm online most of the time because I don't really do much IRL that I'm just kind of used to it. Like I'll respond to it. I really don't care. Like it's such a short name and it sounds like a real name. I mean, it is a real name obviously, but it's just it's normal and natural, and I'll respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I met you, you were Shukoshi.
Same.
Mhm.
And then I don't know if I'm hallucinating this, but I could have sworn the last time I saw you, you were Aki Chan.
No, I've
And
always been Aki Chain. People misread
I
it a
fully
lot because
elucidated
there's
that.
an I in there.
Mandela
People
effect.
because the
Yeah.
first name is technically a Japanese name because it's Aki. So people think
Mhm.
it's like Aki Chan, but that's like kind of cringy. It's not supposed to be Chan. It's supposed to be chain, like a key chain, because it's a little bit of an inside joke. So that's what it's
Yeah.
supposed to be. Because I have people in like public world call me Aki-chan all the time because they don't read. But I would never go by like Aki-chan because that sounds really, really cringy. It's supposed to be like a play on
Yeah.
words, but it conveniently works with the name that I've gone by for probably a decade now. Almost.
Yeah. Well,
Wait.
forgive me for being incapable of reading for a year.
It's okay. It's hard to read in VR. Everything's all grainy and small.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, you actually missed out on an opportunity then, because you could put like a keychain on your avatar. Like you could refer to it.
I could.
You should do that. And you could refer to it.
I
And
could. I
people
mean,
would
I-
ask
I-
like, oh, why does your avatar have like a random keychain on the side or something? It's like, well, actually. And then you can go into the story.
I like rip out a keychain. I like dangle it.
Oh
around
yeah, to make the
with a
sounds.
keychain, yeah.
Oh, that would be great.
That'd be funny.
So it's like when you meet someone and you're trying to be a bit condescending and act like they're like a slave or like a dog. It's like you dangle your keys like, please come here.
Oh my god.
That would actually be pretty funny. You should consider that. You said that your dad actually named your online usernames in the beginning?
Yes, and it's funny because he has always been really crazy about like online safety, but literally put my
Explains it.
unique name smack dab in my username. And that's what was funny about it. And I'm like, it was really funny because he'd say that, but then he put my real name in a thing for a while, and because he helped me sign up for stuff when I was younger because I've been on the internet since I was like pretty young, and it was really funny to me.
Wait, so did you actually when there's like some pop-ups that say like, oh, if you're not older than 13 or something, please ask your guardian or your parents for approval? Like, would you actually do that when you were younger?
Yes, because my dad was very, very like helicoptery about that stuff. I was like monitored, like kind of monitored, kind of not on the internet, like kind of monitored and kind of not monitored. Like you could say pretty confidently that I had like unrestricted access to the internet because I found some things on the internet that, we all as younger internet users have stumbled across and other things like that.
Totally
So
wholesome
it's like
things,
a
right?
weird, it's like a totally wholesome,
Yes.
but yeah, it's funny. It's a very interesting thing how my dad was always so crazy about that, but literally put my real name in a username when he helped me sign up for some stuff when I was younger. And I think that username only was for 2 platforms that I was on.
Okay. Well, to be fair, probably during the time that your dad was looking into the internet, it was like the early ages. People didn't really know. Probably now he would know better. Or
He knew.
Maybe
Yeah,
he doesn't.
he knew.
Okay.
Like he's been building computers. He's been on. He like knew. He definitely knew. It was just probably a little bit of an unwise decision.
Okay. Did you actually talk about that like later on? It's like, Dad, I changed my username to this. It's like, are you okay
No,
with
I
that?
never, because I was off those platforms. Because I changed them so long after, like many, many years after that it wouldn't have mattered anyways. Like he pretty much has been totally hands off on me for many years now.
Well, that would actually be like a fun thing to check out, to just go to your parents and ask them, hey, Dad, I want to create this new online account. Can you come up for a name for me? And then see what people get back from their parents. Like that would be interesting.
Oh
to
my
see.
God, my dad would make up something super inappropriate. I'll say that. He would make up something super inappropriate.
My mother would make up something so cringy. I know it right now. I can think of some cringy things like peace and love. I'm certain she would top it by 10,000 miles.
My dad is known for being a bit of a smart ass, and when he plays games, he tries to name his characters like increasingly inappropriate things to see if he can get through with it. He's had a character on World of Warcraft for many years that has not been flagged for name change. it is kind of a really inappropriate name. I'm not gonna say it just because like, but it's very sexual. He likes to make like those kinds of jokes and stuff, and he likes to push it just for shits and giggles all the time, and it's really funny.
I could totally see that, because when you mentioned World of Warcraft and your dad, I'm like, wait, I spoke to your dad before, or like he's like very
yes,
briefly.
You have. I had him put on the headset once. We were in a World of Warcraft world, and I made him put on my headset, and he was like, "Oh, who's this hot chick, Scope 10 here?" And he was just, it was really funny. There's a clip of it. I think there's a clip of it somewhere.
Yes, there's a clip of it. Yeah.
He comes downstairs and says really profane things while I have open mic on Discord all the time. He prides himself in being as inappropriate as possible when my friends can hear it.
Typical dad moment. Hey, but we love our parents, right? Right?
Yes.
We are obliged to say this. We are obliged. They're watching. They're like all in the public.
There's like a gun pointing at my head right now from
exactly.
the other side of the room.
Yep. There's some snipers
I say
in the window.
Fully willingly.
Right. We'll talk about that out off the podcast.
All right, blink twice. Blink twice if you're in danger.
Yeah. Oh. You blinked twice.
What?
Oh no.
Oh no. Shit, we gotta get out of here.
Nothing out of the ordinary.
No, it's fine. We'll keep rolling. It's fine. All right. Okay, so you actually came to this, I think it was before the podcast, during, I'm not sure. You talked about the things that we are known for. So, well, we have a specific username. Aki's, yours is based on the mispronunciation, the keychain. Devon, yours is based on your real name. But is there something that you as a person are known for? So in like your own friend group or your own community, or even your parents, whatever you have. Is there something that people always call you by this name, or this is what you are always known for in that group? Anything that comes to mind?
I don't have a name that I'm specifically known for. Like, I don't really get nicknames or anything. Like, there's one thing that I am known for, and it's one cosplay image that kind of like took off on Twitter for a little bit. There's some people who might have seen it before. I do like Toho Project cosplays sometimes.
Is that image still online? And
there's an image. No, it is not. I mean, it's been reposted, but it's not on my original account anymore. I was cosplaying Reimu Devontothefourth, and I realized that, before we go out, I gotta fill up my gas. So I pulled up to the pump. You know, my friend was with me because she was gonna go with me.
Wait.
And
I've seen this image. You suggested a world.
You've seen the image?
Saw that image. I'm like, that's fucking weird. It's like a real life image.
Yeah.
That's you.
So
oh my god.
The image. Yeah. So the pump, the pumps there were some people standing out at the gas station, the workers, and they're like, hey, our pumps are having problems. Things are filling up really slow. I promise you, I know how to pump gas. I know a thing or two about cars. I'm not stupid, but the pump overflowed at my car because everything was messed up at the gas station that day. Mm-hmm. There was a massive line. There were people standing out telling us that there were problems. So there's gas all on the floor here. And I'm not trying to step in literal gasoline. So I'm stretching my legs all the way out. And I'm hunched over trying to grab the pump so I can put it back in its thing. Mm-hmm. And my friend just kind of spur of the moment took a picture of me. So there's me, at the side of my car, me in a Reimu Devontothefourth cosplay. And I'm reaching for a gas pump. And it just kind of took off, and it's been reposted in places, and people I'll talk to people. So I'm kind of in the community, and you're like, oh, you're that person. You're the Gaspump Reimu. And I'm regretfully, yes, I am the Gaspump Reimu.
I actually saw that when, I went to the world. I'm like, that's fucking weird. I see just digital, online images, and then see one that's real life.
He memorialized it. My partner memorialized it in the world.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, what about you, Devon? What are you known for?
Well, I've been sitting here giving it as hard of a think as I can. and I'm not known per se too much. I suppose people know me for my unusual hobby. I don't hear a lot of people saying that they're a hobbyist linguist. Uh,
I know
so
one.
I'll spare you the intricate details I can go on about the development of the voiceless bilabial plosive into the voiceless labiodental fricative, and
The what?
how it happens all the time. It happens all the time. But I'll spare you that, and say that in addition to that, I've become known. There's been a joke amongst my friend group that has taken off. If you're familiar with the Vine, where the holder of the camera runs up to this little girl in floaties on the beach and says, "Happy birthday, Raven!" And the little girl goes,
Oh,
"I
that
can't
one,
swim."
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, my
yeah.
friends have been taking to just randomly, whenever they feel like it, saying, "Happy birthday, Devon!" And I always reply with, "I can't swim." But it's quite confusing for people who aren't in on the joke, because then people will always say, "Oh, it's your birthday?" And what I used to do was say, "Oh no, it's this joke, and are you familiar with this Vine?" And but now I've just sometimes I'll just fully lie and say, "Yep," and then fully move on. Or I'll be like, "Well, they're wishing me happy birthday." So, which it's not fun for other people, but it is a little fun for me to see people absolutely confused on whether or not it is my birthday.
Oh, yeah. And just to preface, like you're talking about a Vine, so a video, like a short video, right? Yeah, that's
Mhm.
for
Rip
Yes.
Vine, dead platform.
yeah, exactly. So for the people that do not know that have been born maybe before, Vine is like I guess for now it's like a TikTok
Born
predecessor.
before Vine.
It was
Like, compared
it
to
was
that.
kind of the preface. Well, musically, it was technically the TikTok previous. Vines were like 6 second. They were specifically like 6 second
7.
videos.
Yeah.
7
Was it
seconds.
6 or
Okay, it
7?
was
I
7
thought it was
seconds.
7.
It's 6 or 7. It
Crucify
was
me.
under
I was
10
never
seconds.
even on Vine.
I'll put the
But
number on the
I
screen.
wasn't
part
either,
of
but
the specific generation that did not use Vine, never uploaded a Vine in our lives, but watched so many Vine compilations on YouTube that we
Yeah,
can quote
yeah.
an endless number of them.
Oh yeah,
Road
it's
work
under 10 seconds
ahead.
for sure. I sure hope it does.
There we go.
Oh yeah, I
But yeah.
how do I know that? Oh my god. Well, there's even a meme where people say like, I'll do it for the Vine. Like you'll just do something stupid
Mhm.
just to get recognition online. That's what people call that. I think
Oh,
people
yeah.
still use that nowadays. Like do
People
it for
still
the Vine.
say, or will you do it for the Vine or do it for the gram, that kind of thing. That's what people
Yeah.
usually say. Like gram as in Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's mostly, gonna like do it for the Vine. I ain't gonna do it, pretty much. That's the kind of because it was a Vine, but now people still just say it. It's like cemented in history, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so some people would actually make that like a personal goal where they, become popular on Instagram or Vine or TikTok or whatever. But speaking of goals, do you guys, hopefully this is not one of the goals, do you guys have any goals that you want to work towards? So either on like the shorter term, like a year, or like the longer term, like 3 to 5 years, if you have thought about that. Yes, I'm throwing you guys under the bus again by not giving you any heads up on this topic. But do you have any goals you want to work towards, or you're already working towards, hopefully?
I have kind of a bit of a personal goal of like mostly as a creator. I have, because I'm going back to pursuing my creative endeavors as like a career now. I'm just trying to really catch up on the years that I've slacked off on, because a lot of my abilities are not where they could have been because I kind of slacked off on it, or I sat on super long art block and stuff. And I'm just trying to expand my horizons with like 3D work and stuff like that, because it's good to be well rounded, and I'm just trying to just work on myself as an artist and improve so I can provide like a good portfolio for things and stuff like that. That's kind of like my biggest goal, is being better as an illustrator and stuff like that.
So basically,
And actually finishing my unfinished kit, my unfinished Gunpla kits and stuff, and not letting them sit to rot in my room.
well, so basically, you want to finish off that. What's it? The degree you're trying to follow, right?
Yeah, pretty much that, and also personally grow as an artist and creator and stuff like that.
Well, for me, so when I went to college, I could choose a bunch of different paths. I was debating between two, either business IT, which I eventually settled with, or communication multimedia design. And that was like more of a creative thing where you actually get to make websites and the design of it and do the whole design process. But I eventually settled on business IT. Why? Because the fact that I would rather keep the creative things as like a hobby and not have them be a career. Because basically, that's the question I have for you. Don't you feel like if you would make the thing that you love doing in your free time a career, then you're killing your hobby? You're basically sacrificing it to be work, which would, well, for a lot of people, at least, if they make their hobby their work, it's not really going to be that fun anymore. But I'm not sure how you think about that.
My counterpoint is I have so many different creative hobbies that, like, the thing that I want to do for a career is not my main creative, like, always my main creative hobby, because as I said, I'm really interested in like model kits and other stuff like that, garage kits, which are like like resin cast anime figures that people paint and stuff like that. And a handful of other things that, like, I have other creative hobbies that, just me illustrating or drawing is not the only thing that I do. And I have other hobbies that pertain outside of that I focus more on than art. Like some kinds of video games and stuff like that. So it's a thing of like, and it really depends on where the path that you build for yourself, because as a creator, I think the death sentence in the game industry would be, it's a bit more safer, but it's almost like kind of like a death sentence is going to work for like a AAA studio, and just being thrown through the ringer for low quality AAA games and stuff like that, because like gaming as an art is kind of dead in a sense, as it used to be, and it's an industry instead of a passion project for most people, like how it started. But you have the people who make names for themselves, and they work really hard to create things that are good and work, under indie develop, like they're indie developers, and they they build their own path. And you're not guaranteed to have your stuff go viral or popular or get popular or like really gain success, but there are some indie games that I've played, and there's I guess one that there's like some that particularly inspire me, that realize, hey, I could make it on my own with what I enjoy doing, and that there is a niche for the things that I enjoy, that I can create it to be a lifestyle, and other people will enjoy it, because there will be people that enjoy that niche that you're in, and you won't have to mold yourself to a degree and be unapologetically what you want to be, because there will be people who will enjoy it and appreciate it for those aspects.
Yeah, there's something to say for more like a human, like a passion project kind of thing. You can sometimes see that also in video games, where like this video game is specifically made to make as much money as possible, which is kind of obvious nowadays because of all the mechanics to try and squeeze money out of people. And then you have people that actually build something out of a passion, which is just like more traditional, like an older sense of video game with no or little to no cash grab mechanics, and actually someone that put a lot of effort and soul into their game, and not just a rehash of an existing
something that's
thing.
meant to be a video game, because that's, video games, I think, video games are works of art in their own sense on all different kinds of fronts, and those are the kinds of games I enjoy the most. Like, I think almost everyone can say the same, as that's what they enjoy, is something that is a work of art that fits, that appeals. Some people like stories, some people like gameplay, some people look for different things in games, but there will be a niche that you can fill. And those niches can go, go to higher levels. Like a great example of, like, Yoko Taro's games like Nier Automata. I mean, the platinum games, like combat, the combat that they're all known for in those games is really what lifted the niche out of the floor and made one of, Yoko Taro's games successful. But, the niche is there and people will appreciate it. You just have to, do the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe also for like even completely different things besides, well, you could also say it as an art, like completely different topic, like watches. Like you have mechanical watches, you have quartz watches, you have smart watches. In the industry, things like smart watches are seen as like not soulful. Like they're just made by machines. They're just mass produced. It's not really what watches should be about, or is, that's not really appreciated. And then you have watchmakers that, do all these kind of little hand polish things by hand. And just because of the fact that an actual human being sat there with like a microscope and like fucking sand down all the things and put all the small pieces together, that adds more character than something that's just like mass produced or just made to sell, really. Besides, and then something that's actually made by human is just made for, well, it's also made to sell, of course, because someone's got to pay for it. But usually these kind of things are higher price in a lot of these cases.
Yeah.
And have a more rich story behind it, which that's why a lot of watch people will buy these kind of watches, just for the story and the things that happen behind it. And same could be said for video games, although, passion project video games are not necessarily more expensive. Quite often it's actually the opposite.
It's quite the opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
The opposite. It's cheaper. I mean, one of my favorite indie games that I've played in a really long time, it costs only $25, and I think that's going to be about the finishing price. And it is, I would say, pretty decently popular, and it's not even finished yet. And it fits in such a niche, but people appreciate it, and like that kind of stuff inspires me, knowing, well, the things that I enjoy can make it, and there will always be someone that will appreciate that niche that I do.
Yep.
And that I can make it in a realm of oversaturation and stuff like that, because some people can capture lightning in a bottle like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think that counts for all the industries where the human touch there will always be a place for that, where people value that higher. That's why art, like paintings and stuff, exists, is because of the fact that people are willing to put so much money into these emotional values or the stories behind a painting or whatever, or the person that does it. So yeah, that I believe that it will always be a thing. But not to go too far on a tangent, Devon, I think you have been thinking about this for a long time now, or being able to. So what are your goals on like the short term or the long term, or both?
Wow. An incredible setup where I'm about to show very little for the amount of time I've spent here thinking.
That's all right.
I do have some very clear goals for my life. But if you'll allow me to get a little bit sad,
Sure.
I currently suffer from severe clinical depression. So that sort of puts the kibosh on a lot of things that I would like to do with my life.
You
So
don't
for the
sound, to be
past
honest, you
few
don't sound like
years,
someone that has clinical depression.
yeah, well, most people who do don't. The So my goal has been getting well, and I have accomplished all of the non medical routes toward that end, and so medical routes are where I've had to uh, uh, throw my attempts, which as a goal, treating an illness is very uh, can be very disheartening because unlike practicing a skill or making money or things like that, you don't make progress. You don't get better and better. With
It's
treating
not
an illness,
linear
you
at
just
all.
have to, yeah, you have to try something and then it doesn't work, and then you have to try something else until you get to the thing that does work. Um,
And it doesn't
so
always work
it's
perfectly either.
yeah,
It's not always like a perfect
yeah.
solution. It's kind of well, this kind of works, this kind of helps. It eases the pain a little bit, eases the burden of it, but it's not really that perfect, but it makes life a little more livable.
hmm Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I'm very thankful that I found something that, although it doesn't get me all the way there, has helped. Um, but the that has been my main goal is to blow up. Sorry. The vines, they're in my brain. Get them out. Uh,
Oh boy.
Those brain
uh,
rot.
yeah. Uh, so yeah, that's been my primary focus because I'm not well enough to work. And believe it or not, if you work, you can get this thing called money, and money lets you
What's that?
do lots of things. Uh,
Speaking of money, we're still looking for a sponsor. No, just just continue.
This
I'm not looking for a
episode was
sponsor.
sponsored by mental health treatment in the United States. Wait, we don't have any money?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Not very.
right, because that sponsor doesn't exist.
Yeah, I was about to say which.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah, that doesn't exist.
Uh,
Which mental health treatment in
uh,
America? Because I've seen so much of it that I don't think there is an actual institution or something really working towards that. Well, I could speak the same for my own country, where because I have experience with people with depression. I've had depression myself in the past for like a short time. I got over it myself, not through medical means, but just through mindset. Um,
Everyone has
so I know what it's like.
depressive points in their life. It just depends on. Yeah.
hmm Yeah,
Yeah, everyone has
depression is
ups
a,
and
a
downs. Yeah.
pretty a pretty sticky illness to try and treat, due to the fact that it's sort of a state, a mental state, sort of like a fever is in the body, where there can be a ton of different things that causes a fever, and
Mhm.
you can't really treat the fever. You have to treat the thing causing it. Depression is similar, where there are a
Well,
whole
and
bunch of different things that can cause it.
mental health cascades onto other problems. I am so like, not to get like super personal, but I've struggled with like mental health problems my entire life. I won't get into it to detract, and I won't tell my whole life story here, my personal deets, because it's not really important, but it's something I've struggled very long with for a very long time, and it's very hard. Even you do medication, you go to therapy, you do all that, and it's a mixed bag, and it's a lot of work, and it's a really long process, and I think I've come pretty far as a person, and I've compared to the situation I was in many years ago, but it is it is very different for everybody, and it really just depends. It's not a linear journey. Symptoms aren't linear. Treatment isn't linear. It is not easy. It's not pretty, and it is a lot to overcome. And dealing with your mental health as like a lifelong, short term to long term goal is is very reasonable and very understandable. And mental health is something that is it's multi-faced, and there's a lot of different things that I think a lot of people don't understand about it to a degree. And there's a very strong reality with a lot of things, and it's a very hard thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
for me, what I would advise a lot of people, or at least in my case, if I would start, or if I would like quit my job and I would not even do these podcasts and wouldn't really see my friends or actually have anything to work towards or some, thing to do, then I would just spiral into depression eventually. Because there's a saying that
Mhm.
idle hands are a devil's playground. Basically, if you stay idle, you don't really do anything productive or anything you want to work towards, then you're just gonna spiral into more sinful behavior or you get into depression. And for me, that's the case. That's why I always try
Yeah.
to keep myself occupied with things. And if I
Mhm.
wouldn't do that, I get into depression. But things like goals actually give you something to work towards um, with a clear, end goal, end sight, where you can say, okay, now I met this criteria, I've met my goal, now I can work towards another one or whatever. I believe that. So in this case, if your goal is to get over your mental illness, I would say try and find something else besides it, maybe, or at least something else you can really meaningfully work towards and measure to a point where you can say, okay, now I've actually met my goal or not. Because otherwise, if you have a vague goal, it's going to be very difficult to actually find a way to see, okay, what progress am I making towards this? Like your mental sanity isn't like a meter that you can just like gauge. It's not like a thermometer you put in there.
No.
Um, to measure your temperature and see like, oh, okay, now I'm no longer sick or whatever. It's like, no, that doesn't exist. So there should be
Because it
at least
doesn't
some kind
always
of way
go
to,
away, depending.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it can never go away for some people. Some people who are medically diagnosed with problems, and like, me and maybe Devon as well, it doesn't always go away. But I think one of the most important baseline things is finding a purpose. For
Hmm.
people to find a purpose, because a lot of people don't. And you know, for the longest time I didn't really feel like I had a purpose or some kind of thing to have a purpose forwards. And, I planned on not even living past like 15 years old, 16 maybe, for a long time. And now I'm
Hmm.
like older, and I'm bordering on 20 very soon, and I'm like, well, fuck. Things are crazy now, because it's like I've gone this far, and it's like, slowly you find, a purpose of something worth living, or something to work towards, because even though it might be very, very hard, it's finding some kind of purpose to keep going, because it does get better at the end of the day, for sure.
Yep,
Like,
definitely.
the sun
Yeah.
isn't going to explode. The sun's going to rise another
Not yet.
day. And I think the most the most important thing that I talk to people about when, I have these, occasional conversations with people about, is that you have to take the first steps to help yourself, because, helping yourself is, wanting to help yourself is the most important thing, and wanting to do something, because I, for a very long time, sat comfortable in my own sadness, and felt almost like solace in my own depression, and it wasn't helping me for a long time. Going out of your
I wonder
comfort zone to get
why.
better and to get treatment is a credibly hard thing to do, and getting help is not easy, and it never will be very easy. And like, just doing, going out there and doing something to help yourself is the most important thing, because at the end of the day, the only person that can truly help yourself is you,
Yes.
within, your reasonable bounds, because we all have our own boundaries. We all have our own struggles. I am okay with certain things to a certain degree and a certain boundary. Other people have different boundaries. It's harder for some people to do things. It's not as hard for some other, and it's just baby steps. You can't compare your journey to another person's journey, and you just have to do the right things for yourself.
Yeah. It's important to me to keep in mind the sort of complexity of mental health, and that, like I was just saying, that depression is sort of a resultant state that is caused by lots of different things. So the things that will work for someone will do nothing for someone else.
Well,
So it's
it
and
can be
there are
medical,
general healthy
environmental,
there are general healthy practices
medical,
like and like the things that everyone tells you to do, eat right, exercise,
Just go drink water. It'll solve all your problems. Go exercise. It'll solve all your problems. No, it doesn't. It does not. I mean, it helps. There are quote scientific proof of working out, that stuff's good for you, doing all those things, but it's as we've said, it's not symptoms aren't linear, and mental health is a very multi-faced problem with a lot of factors, and everybody's different. Jesus. Sorry.
So to treat depression, you have to treat what's causing it. So, and those things all help because they help facilitate the body, and all of those things. You know why sleeping right and eating right and all of that makes your body run better. But if those aren't the things that are causing your depression, then those are a stepping stool that can help you toward getting toward the actual cause. And the thing that I get very frequently frustrated with a lot of the rhetoric around mental health, especially from people who have the absolute best of intentions, who want to help other people, because there's a dark side to that a lot of people don't realize, and that's if you're giving advice and you're like, this will do it, this will solve it, and then people do that advice and it doesn't, that if you're not aware of that, that can lead you down the path of, it's not working, I'm broken, I'm going to be like this forever, it's all my fault.
It's a pitfall that it's easy to fall down.
Yeah.
And sometimes it will get worse before it gets better, for sure. Because I've had it get much, much worse before it gets better.
Yeah. So if I could send a message out into the world, for those who are dealing with mental illness, know that if you're trying, if you're working on it, then you're not at blame. You're doing everything you can. And if things aren't working, that it's not your fault that they're not working. It just means that you have to keep going and try the next thing. But and it's the hardest thing to do, but the important thing is to not give up on that. But for people wanting to help people with mental illness and give advice and things like that, my recommendations would be, don't present any solution as universal, because of that exact thing I said, where someone will try it and think, well, I'm broken and awful. Um, I would always present something as here is something that might help, rather
Listen to
than
what the
do
person
this and it will
wants.
work. Yeah.
Yeah, because some
So
people just
the
want
other
people to
thing
listen. Some
is,
people want special, like, you want to
Mhm.
listen and understand the person that you're talking to, because you cannot,
you,
you can't do a
yeah.
catch-all for all problems. And some people just want
Mhm.
to be listened to. Some people want people to help solve their problems. Some people, it really just depends. You want to listen and understand the perspective of the person you're talking to, because everyone has very different problems that they're going through.
Yeah. You never know more about someone's mental illness than they do. Um, they they are living in those shoes. They know what they've that have tried, and oftentimes mental illness will make you experience emotions and mental states that neurotypical people just have never experienced. And if you haven't experienced the emotion of feeling nothing, not boredom, not sort of a neutral state, but
Absolutely
truly there
nothing.
is no
Numb.
emotional state, then it's indescribable.
And you like you
The
it's
sort
like
of,
things like
yeah.
manic states are completely indescribable
Hmm.
too. Like extreme paranoia, extreme mania, like those are like such strong, like, feelings of like such strong, like, mental states that it's hard to explain to people who have never experienced it. Because you would think, you talk to
Yeah.
someone who's never maybe experienced something like that, and you think, well, wait, how could you be so paranoid, or how could you imagine that like literally everything in the entire world's after you all at once, or you're feeling such strong feelings of, like, just insanity, that it's like you think, well, how could someone logically end up feeling like that? And the problem is like, it just, you can't explain it. There might be root causes from, like, certain things. There could be something that triggers it. It could be part of, how you're diagnosed, that some people are more susceptible to episodes like that. But it's such a, even just in the general scope of things, we don't understand the human brain, and it's something that you just can't fully describe. There might not be any rhyme or reason to what you experience sometimes. And it's
Yeah.
just kind of like,
The
well, yeah.
if someone said like, "Oh, I'm having an internal hemorrhage," uh you wouldn't go up and say, "Oh, well, I think that might be caused because you jumped too hard and you should probably stretch a little bit about it." Um, that's insane. Um, because you don't know what has caused that, and you don't know what's going to help with that because you're not a doctor. Not only are you not a doctor, but you're not feeling what that person is feeling to know specifics that you would need to know to treat that. And mental health is the same way. I always say, if you wouldn't do it for physical health, don't do it for mental health. Like to diagnose and prescribe treatment for a mental illness, you gotta have a degree to do that. Um, the No one tries to be a junior doctor because they know like that's someone's life, and you don't know enough about that. But people very frequently think that they can be junior psychiatrist. Um, they they
I
know,
I
oh
took
well,
one
this is caused by this. Yeah.
I took one
Mhm, mhm.
psychology class in college, and now I'm a licensed therapist, and I could diagnose you of your problems, that kind of thing. I've met people like
Yeah.
that before.
Yeah. Yeah. And even yeah. So it's a very the I feel like a lot of the fundamental issue with mental health, in as I see it, is a disconnect between it and the health conditions of the rest of the body. Um, if people started treating mental health like they do cancer or diabetes or pulmonary embolism or vitamin D deficiency, then the I think we would live in a better world.
The
Has
brain
also
just does not work how the rest of the
there's-
body does.
Yeah. Well, yes and no.
Yes, to a degree.
So this is also what I say is that our mental health, like research and treatment, is in the same place our physical health research and treatment was in like the 1920s. Like we're getting there. We're beginning to get an understanding of like the basics of the diseases, and these things work and these things don't. But we still are lacking a lot of the fundamental understanding of like how exactly does this happen. Um, and there are still a whole bunch of things that we just don't have effective treatments for. But science and medicine progresses, and I do believe that we will get further and further in neuropsychology. But with
Well, and there's a societal
with
degree
that
to it
all
as
said,
well with
yeah.
mental health compared to normal. There's a societal degree to it because, some places, like you think of like an example of here in America, people are taking mental health more seriously. But in places like Japan and maybe some other, culturally wise, because of like cultural things and other societal, it's not taken as seriously, or it's way more stigmatized, or it's, taboo to even talk about mental health like that. There's such a societal level to mental health compared to physical health for sure. And it's changing
Yeah.
and ever, evolving as, we progress, as places progress.
Mm-hmm. It's
from my perspective, what I would at least say to people. So I've also been in a situation where people come to me to ask for advice on things like even mental related problems. And I don't claim to be an expert. I just give them my experience and see like, okay, this might work for you, and take it how it is. Just don't treat that advice, of course, as like an actual medical device, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist or whatever. But
It's your own lens that maybe someone hadn't thought of previously, because sometimes, having advice from other people, sometimes it might open your view of maybe I should look at it this way instead, or maybe I should do, that kind of thing. I never thought of that kind of thing kind of experience,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so for me, when I'm trying to help someone with mental issues or any life problems, because I can try to do that, you always have to look at the intent of the person that's trying to give you the advice. If the intent is like, I value you as a person, I want you to get better, I'm trying to help, then that is not from a negative place. They're really trying to genuinely help. But of course, that might vary per person on what they can contribute to your problem, or if they can contribute at all, or they give some advice that might be, completely incorrect or invalid for your situation. But please do look at the intent that people give you the advice for. That's what I was going to say. And also, I do agree that our knowledge on mental health it seems to be kind of skewed based on like physical problems with the body we have. Because of course it's easier to troubleshoot physical problems than mental problems, because we cannot like debug the brain and see what's happening inside. So we just kind of have to, learn from trial and error. But yeah, like trying to treat your own mental illness or life itself, or these kind of things in the medical, medical society, medical field, things get better over time. So do keep that in mind when you are looking at these kind of issues. Like, okay, they might not be fixed today or tomorrow, but we are trying to work towards a solution for this, and especially trying to try to help yourself out and try different solutions. At least be open for advice, I would say. Just don't close you off. It's like, no, you guys don't understand. I don't want any help. Like, that's not going to help anyone.
It doesn't help. I've been really in that position before, and it hurts a lot. It hurts a lot in that position. And I think the biggest thing that people need to think about when they go to get treatment and when they go to get help is you cannot 100% fix your problems, and you cannot go into it expecting to get fixed immediately, or even just ever, because you will never, when you live with, especially medically medically diagnosed mental health problems, there's no way you're getting rid of that. You're just learning to live with it. And I think that's the thing, is understanding what I think the self-awareness is the biggest thing, because even though I'm not, I've gotten some treatment for a lot of things over the years. And the thing is, I may not deal with it the best all the time when I do have those problems, and I may not be in a state where I want to be, but at least I recognize I have full recognition of what causes how I feel, or what causes certain, I guess maybe relapses or something like that. And you cannot go into it expecting your problems to be just poof gone, even if you work on it for years, because it will never totally be gone. And I don't mean that as like in a doomer way. You kind of have to learn to live with it, like how you learn to live with anything else. You can never fully solve a problem. And you have to realize that you are a human being and you are flawed as well. And that, things will never be, oh, well, this is fixed. It'll work. I'll work and, I'll work on it and then suddenly be fixed one day and there won't be problems anymore. It's not like, like we're working with machines. It's just
Yeah,
it's so complex of a problem that you can't expect, well, oh, I'm not at this, I'm not totally fixed, so it's a totally lost cause. Like, it will never be perfect. You can't, every single day and everything isn't going to be perfect every single day, in your job, in your life, anything you do, there's always going to be problems. It's just how you handle those problems and how you move on from them, because your life will never be 100% free of problems. And you cannot go in expecting being like, oh, well, my life's going to be perfect after treatment or something like that. Like, it will never be perfect.
yeah.
And you cannot expect perfection.
It's the reason why we talk about treating mental health and not curing mental illness, because it's at the moment, with our current medical understanding, it's not curable. Things are treatable, so there are things that can be done to make things easier, but the way your brain works is something you cannot run away from. It will be with you always. And that's not to say that. Yeah, that's not to say that.
And not
the issues that it's causing you are unresolvable, but it is to say that it's the issues won't go away. It's a management thing, and anyone who's had one session with a therapist will likely have heard, like, this is not going to be poof gone. This is going to be something that you work lifelong with, for those who have diagnosed mental illnesses. Yeah,
it's all management and regulation.
I was going to say, with advice, absolutely, in response to you, Scope, that it's important to take into account where is a person coming from when they're giving advice, especially when they're giving hurtful advice. Because I've dealt with a lot of people giving me advice from a good place that is actually, without them realizing it at all, has a lot of hurtful undertones and assumptions.
Most people don't know. Most people are not trying to be malicious. Most people, you can't assume that everyone's out to get you, because most people have good intentions, just misguided opinions or misguided, experiences of how to, like, they're giving information, a little bit of misguided information. And most people are coming from the kindest place they can, but they just don't know. So you can't assume that everyone's out to get you, or you can't assume that, oh, these people just suck and they're mean and they're trying to, turn me in the wrong way, because it's not the case. People just don't know. Most people just are unaware of, and that goes for just a lot of things, even outside of just talking about mental health, honestly.
Well, to not be the
that I have
Christian
found
in this conversation, but I would like to that extent, there's a saying for that, which is the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And yeah, that goes with anything. So yeah,
Oh, yeah.
don't assume that someone is malicious in the thing they're trying to accomplish. At least not as a initial thing.
And the way to deal with that effectively, I have found, is that when someone, and yeah, this is broadly in life, not just in talking about mental health, but when someone has done something that's hurtful to you, but they did it out of good intentions and they didn't realize it, the thing to do is not to get mad at them. It's to say, hey, that thing you just did was hurtful to me, and this is why. And if that person is your friend and kind to you, they will say, "Oh my God, I did not realize. I won't do it again. Thank you for letting me know."
You help them
Sometimes you'll
understand,
get
'cause
some
some people
people
don't know.
say, yeah. Sometimes you'll get some people who say "fuck you," and that's
Oh,
when you
yeah.
realize, maybe they're not the best of
That's a them
friends.
problem, not me. That's a them problem.
Yeah,
But most people are
yeah,
reasonable and be
but
like, "Oh, I didn't know. I'll make sure not to
yeah,
do that, or I'll work on it," because people can't read your minds, and you cannot expect people to read your mind. I was like that at one point
exactly.
where I expected people to just know, and the thing is most of the time those people aren't going to be thinking about you all the time, and they will not remember everything. They cannot read your mind, and you just have to understand that people most of the time just do not know. And you just, you tell them how you feel in a nice way. Hopefully they understand, and you go about your day.
Yeah. It's so cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. Most the way to solve it's the turn it off and turn it on again, but for social issues, the thing that solves almost everything is communicate. Just tell the other person what you're thinking and feeling. Um
Communication is so key.
and that
It's just so key. So
yeah.
many stupid big things
Mhm.
could be like so many stupid things could be avoided and solved if people just communicated. But it's not that simple, and that's why
Mhm.
you pick and choose your battles and who you spend your time with and what you want to put your energy into. Because at the end of the day, you
Yeah.
are the most important person in your life, and you need to do what's right for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And I was going to say, in terms of giving advice, what I've found is giving advice is a skill and it needs practice. But the people I found who give the best advice are the people who are the best listeners, the people who will fully like try and get to the root of what's going on with you, who will ask you questions. And so if you want to be better at giving advice, my suggestion is don't practice giving advice, practice listening.
Learn how to live in people's shoes. Learn how to put yourself in
Yeah.
people's shoes, because understanding a problem from all angles is very important, from all kinds of
Mhm.
aspects, whether just and it's just an in general thing. Looking at everything from all angles, is a pretty important skill, because, you can't, taking one side on one thing, or, providing just your view of something is not always helpful, because people really need to look from all angles. And you take a moment and sit in someone's shoes.
yeah, to add to that, because I've actually had a discussion with someone before where they told me something they've not told before. It was very hurtful towards me, or like very it's something basically I do not stand for. Basically, something that just went completely opposed to everything I stand for. And my initial reaction was like, "No, this is dumb. Like this, you shouldn't have made that decision." And I got mad. But then afterwards, I'm like, "Okay, wait, think I fucked up." Then I tried to understand from their perspective. So I asked them, "Okay, so what is the context of this problem that you're having, or the decision you made? I need to know the context in which you were in order to fully understand under which conditions you made this decision." And trying to
That
ask those
decision, yeah.
questions is very crucial to really understanding what they went through. Because if you look at from an outsider's
Oh,
perspective,
yeah.
things might seem very black and white. But if you actually get to know the context of like the situation the person is living in, the kind of things that went on their mind at the moment, the other reactions of other people at the time. If you take all those things into account, you get a better picture of what actually happened, and it allows you to make at least a better decision on, or better opinion on the situation than if you just look at it from an outsider view and not really try
Because
and live
people
into
don't
the mind of the other
live.
person.
People don't live your life. People don't think the way you do. People were not raised the same way that you were. Even if you were kind of raised the same way, there's many different factors. It's just, there's so many different factors. People aren't just born thinking the way they do. And people aren't born thinking like, oh wow, this person, you could see the way someone reacts to something and be like, wow, that's so stupid. How could you ever think that? But it's like, they have so many different experiences and, other things that have gotten them to that point in life where, people say things and do things for a reason. And there's a multitude of different reasons. So you can't always assume someone's intentions because, people gain the way that they view life. People gain the way that they react to things because of the way that they grew up or the experiences they've had.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
understanding that is the most important part to getting onto a level playing field with someone on how they feel. Because most, I think everybody can agree that all they want is to be understood. And that just goes for anything, honestly. Like if someone understands, then you can start and build off of that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, to not go too much further onto this topic, because I think we already said a lot of things about this. I do have one more topic, at least I want to close off with, a bit more lighthearted. So because this was just a topic about the goals. Yeah. Well, that's mostly just
Before we move on,
introduction part. Well, yeah.
One
Gonna close off.
One last thing I want to say, which is if you're suffering from any mental health condition or mental illness, the first thing is you're not broken. You're not wrong or bad for being sick. You should treat it like illness. You would not be morally bad if you had diabetes or cancer. So know that first of all, you're not wrong, and second of all, there is help. And it's just something that takes a lot. It's a long journey, but you can do it, and it just has to happen one step at a time. So,
Mm-hmm. Amen to that, brother. Amen.
Amen.
Exactly. We now end it. No, so to end on a bit more lighthearted note, I want to switch up the topic. This is one thing I actually wanted to ask you. It's not even in my notes. I have like a bunch of topics I can pick off of the list I come up with, and this is just one specifically for this group because you both have experience with this thing, and the audience might not be very aware of this type of culture that has been around for quite a while. I'm not sure if it predates the internet, but I'm talking about the furry community. And I've had some people also on before that have briefly discussed this. But I would like to hear your guys' take on it, on first of all, what is a furry? What does the furry community do? And an example of how do you guys think that community actually got a foothold in society? Well, mostly online society, I guess, but also carries over to the physical realm. Any thoughts on that? Well, first of all, what is a furry?
what is a furry?
Can you explain a bit about the furry community?
Let's get different. Yeah. People's
What is a
definitions of
furry?
furry
I don't
really
know.
range.
Yeah.
You can start with your opinion because you are a more, from what I assume, I think still is active in the furry community nowadays. I was active in a very different furry
Yeah.
community many years ago. So and people's opinions and the way, it's such a layered community. So I guess we can start off with how you feel about it or what your definition is and how you are in it as someone who is consistently still a part of it.
Mhm. Furry is I I chuckled at what I'm about to say before I said it. Furry is a fuzzy term. Uh,
Got him. Oh
you
my God.
cannot draw. You cannot draw a hard line between what is furry and what is not furry. Um, it's it's quite nebulous, and so there are a lot of things that people are like, oh, that's definitely furry, and a lot of things that people will say, ah, that's definitely not, but it's the there's a lot of gray space in the most basic sense. A furry is a person who likes and takes a particular interest in anthropomorphic animals. And anthropomorphic animals are animals with human traits. Um, that's a very broad definition that includes Mickey Mouse and excludes aeromorphs. So it's not the
Yeah,
most
the
useful definition.
Yeah, the thing with anthropomorphized animals is that even before like furries became to prominence, anthropomorphized animals have always been a thing. From just like a retrospective of history and media, anthropomorphized animals have always been a thing because humans obviously gravitate towards things that have human traits. So, people will anthropomorphize animals because, people love animals, and I feel like animals are kind of like culturally wise a universal thing. When you think, every culture, great example, every culture has the same opinion about like what a tiger is. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain kind of, I guess maybe you could say, vibe or something like that. And it's just, humans tend to seek out human traits and things. So it's just kind of something that has been common in media for so long, from animation to storytelling to writing books, novels, everything, that it is just something that has grown and evolved and changed into its own niches over time.
Yeah. Shout out to my homeboy Anubis, OG furry. But the yeah, so it's definitely been part of the human consciousness for a very long time. Because you can look back through all sorts of myths and fables and see that we like to use animals symbolically, to represent certain traits or ideologies or things of the sort. Um, and so it is not surprising at all that there are people who would like this and think about this. Um, so the interesting thing is not that there are people who think like this, but how the specifics came about. Not so much furries, but the furry community, at least in my eyes. Um, and there's documentaries. You can watch a documentary on the furry
There's
community.
plenty of YouTube. You can see so many good YouTube essays that go back from the origins of furry conventions to, the communities, but it's such a layered community that you would have to be sleuthing for hours to figure out the multi layers of the community.
Wait, so do you actually have a
But
good
the
recommendation for a documentary about furries?
Oh, there's
if
one.
people want to know.
Crap. There's
I
one
don't
that
know.
I saw a while ago. Um, I don't remember the one that I've watched. But I think I watched one that was about like the origin of like furry conventions and how they started. I can't remember. I would have to take a look, but it was
Mhm.
mostly talking about where conventions started and how the community like grew convention wise and stuff, since a lot of furries are one of those few things, you think of like your Comic-Con, you think of like your anime cons, and then you think of your furry cons. Those are like the three sectors of like fan base, well, not fan base exactly, but the three sectors of conventions that you see that are on a niche level like that.
I could have come prepared, but did not. Well, actually, I couldn't have come prepared because
that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of this podcast. No fucking preparation. This is not scripted. Not even my intro. So
yeah. So I don't have a specific one to point you towards, but I would be wary, and I'd like to get into this in just a moment. But if you go searching for like what is a furry and material like that, you'll find a lot of sort of anti-furry propaganda. So I guess I'm going to start espousing my thoughts. Yeah. So I think what it means to be a furry in the modern age is to have a relationship and be part of the furry community. Oftentimes, I know for a long time, I considered myself a furry, but I wasn't interacting with the community any. Well, I was interacting in receiving things from the community, looking at art, reading stories, all of those types of things, but I wasn't interacting with people, not even face to face, but back and forth. And it was only then that I considered myself to be part of the furry fandom, part of the furry community. And it is like a detectable shift for me. Because it's the fandom, the community that really is the differentiation. And so if we start talking about the community specifically, then there's origins for that, but it has become
it's been a fandom rooted in art. It has always been a community rooted in art. It always has been and always will be. When I was part of it as a kid, I was on the art, I was sharing art, it was people gushing over their character designs and how much they loved, I had my own characters that I made. And that was my thing. Occasionally I would role play, but that, I was a role player, but I was really into stuff like warrior cats as a kid. I was like one of those people. I was into wolves in the role play aspect because, role playing an animal is very different than role playing a human. And that's kind of what I was like one of the wolf girls, you had like the horse girls and you had the wolf girls, you had those kinds of people. And, it's always though been a community that has always been really rooted in art. And it is a community that really appreciates art because you see fursuits and that kind of stuff. And it's its own kind of art. And it will always be and has always been rooted in art. Because some of the first furry conventions date back to art and that kind of stuff and sharing art and media and all that.
Definitely. And I'm thinking about it while sitting here, and I'm thinking about it's not that weird when you really get into it, because we talked about like the cultural connotations, like why it would make sense to have an interest in anthropomorphic animals. And then the other half of it is just a community. People love communities. People love getting together with like-minded people and talking and having friends. So the fact that there is a furry community is completely unsurprising. There are a couple interesting points, like how this community really developed as a core portion of the internet and grew up with the internet. By the way, don't wish for death of all furries, because guess what? The internet will go out overnight.
Yes, a lot of important stuff. We have the saying about suspiciously wealthy furries with good jobs. So much is going to fizzle out if you get rid of furries. And I think a good thing is, a good thing to remember is like, there's always a bad part of a community, because I'm not going to get into like the specifics, but people say, oh, these furries are animal fuckers or something like that. And, guess what? There are bad people like that, but you can also look at the anime community and you can see all the people who are like lolicons and basically pedophiles, and it is on that exact same caliber of the same caliber of stuff with furries. Like it is there's a bad part to everything, and there are people, you can equate the really bad part of the furry community to the really bad part of the anime community in that level of, sexual deviance of how people, say that. I mean, it's not, I mean, it's obviously, sick. I think we all here have common sense that, that stuff is illegal and bad, but it is not
Yeah.
you can't just say, oh, all furries are, animal, they want to do that kind of stuff, because they don't. I was
So
I was a
I
kid just
do.
drawing animals as a kid because I enjoyed it. I never even thought once
Yeah.
about doing that kind of stuff because I'm not, that way.
Yeah. And I do want to talk about where I think this sort of the hatred toward the fandom, because if you've been on the internet, you've probably seen, like, way more so than anime fans or comic fans or sports fans, there is, and maybe I've seen less of it nowadays, but historically there has been a strong anti-furry presence with just an immediate negative reaction to them. People constantly being hazed and harassed for being a furry. And I think this is just something from very early in the internet that got kind of rooted into internet culture, and that is furries are the punching bag of the internet. They're sort of
It's always been a
the
thing.
minority
It's
that,
kind of
oh,
always
it's
been a
okay.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay to make fun of furries. They're furries. They deserve it because uh so the because furries have always been the acceptable punching bag for the internet, there is so much hateful and malicious stuff out there about them, which is a lot of the times flat out false, and when it's not false is completely inflammatory and exaggerated a very large portion of the time. Um, the I honestly, talking to people and being a furry, I have found that most people are pretty neutral on the matter if they're not a furry. But the there just is a history of trolls on the internet wanting uh, to pile up on one specific community, and furries are that one specific community. Lucky us.
And I know people
um,
who have had bad experiences with furries. Like, I know people, oh, I hate furries because of this one person, but they're for reasons totally other than the fact that they were a furry. And I don't blame them to a degree, because a lot of people, some people have media ruined for them because of people. Like, I have some things that are ruined for me because of fandoms. But, it goes for pretty much anything, that you cannot lump an entire community together because of bad apples. And I will admit, there's some really bad people in the furry community. There's some really bad people in the anime community that people, we condemn those actions because they do not represent us. And those are off on their own. They are off on their own sector of like, degeneracy, I guess you could say, because that doesn't, just because we like, anthro animals doesn't make us, because I always see people constantly saying, well, oh, you wanna fuck dogs, don't you? And it's like, no, I don't. Like, it's just it's a very tunnel vision. It's a very so tunnel vision of a mindset. It's like people, who say to anime fans, "Oh, you like anime girls? What are you like? Do you like little kids or something?" Because some people think that as well. And I'm like, "No, I'm not that. There's people who are like that, but don't lump them in with me." There's always bad people everywhere, and there always have been and always will be, and it is a pretty narrow-minded mindset to it's like tunnel vision, if you can't see past the fact that there are multi-layer, there's these layers to the community, and the bad people will always exist, and 90% of the good people, 90% of the community are going to condemn those actions, and not want to associate with that.
Yes.
90% is a low estimate. 99.9%. The thing is, I especially found with the furry community, because there is so much false accusation of these things, the furry community is very actively self-policing. People will get piled on if they I don't want to make it sound like an authoritarian regime or something, but we're not tolerant of abhorrent behavior.
There's no room for
that being
bullshit,
said, yeah. That being
We're
said,
protecting our community.
Yeah, exactly. But that being said, the furry community is, while completely intolerant of those things, a very welcoming place, I've found. There are a lot of people who, maybe because of this large backlash, have come to really be supportive of one another in this community in a way that I haven't quite seen in other communities. But, I'm not as deep into some other communities. And I find that excellent. But I actually had an experience when I was first getting into VR so I had been a furry for a while, and then I saw this thing and I was like, oh, I get it. I get why someone would be like, I hate furries. And that was, I was in a public world, and there were these two furries who were together and just were hugging and growling and that toward one another, and it was a lot. And it was off-putting, and I understand that that's off-putting, and it's because
it would be off-putting to anybody.
Because within the community we're very affectionate toward one another, and we have that high degree of comfortability. So if you go into any space where people are being incredibly casual and comfortable with one another in a way that is not your mode of being casual and comfortable, it's going to be very off-putting. And so, because furries do a lot of what they do on the internet, a lot of their more casual, comfortable, personal stuff is visible to the wider world.
And it goes for the outside of the furry community too. I mean, like, you see, you go to, anyone who's familiar with VRChat, there's that population of people who use TDA avatars and, have a little too much PDA in a public black cat. And that goes the same, that goes the exact same way. There's people, the people that you meet in VRChat and a lot of the people that you interact with aren't like wider involved in the community. They're people of similar interest in a small group acting the way that they're comfortable, and you get a perception of said community or said kind of thing because you see how those people act within that community. But that's not always the case for the wider community, and that just goes for anything. This is also just general speaking.
Well, for me,
think about if any random stranger came off the street and into your friend group's Discord call and listened in. They would think you're insane, probably. They would think you're
100%.
very concerning. And so when you see furries being weird, and furries are weird and do weird things, oftentimes that's the explanation. It's among friends. So
yeah, so my opinion on the furry community is much like any niche community is I will take the piss out of anyone for doing weird stuff, even anime people or furries, or doesn't really matter for me. Like, there should at least be some banter allowed. But like you guys said, there's definitely a spectrum of people within the community. Like, some people that are just like lightly into it and like maybe look at the art, or they like anthropomorphized characters, and like the completely off end, the extreme end of the spectrum might be people that they think it's fine to fuck furry avatars or fuck animals even. Like that, yeah, that's too extreme. Like there's not many people there. And yeah, those people, obviously they get hate. But to clump in the extreme end of a spectrum with everyone else on the spectrum, that doesn't make any sense. From my experience, when I talk with a lot of like furries I see online, it's like, okay, this person has a furry avatar, so they're a furry. Like can safely assume that. So then you go talk with them. And then from my experience, it's actually like always been very pleasant. Like they're always nice people. You can just talk with them normally. You can even talk about things not related to, their fandom. Even though, like you said, there is indeed a prejudice from the internet and internet culture from the beginning to have some bad views towards furries. And that's initially how I started as well. Like that's the stereotype you get into. But then when you finally actually start talking to these people, like there's a human behind it. There's a person behind it. If you start talking with them, then you notice like, oh no, these are just normal people. Like they are just involved into this community that might be weird for you or you don't get it. And it's like, that's fine. Like we all like different things. But yeah, they do get clumped in. They get a lot of hate on the internet, which I guess people really have to experience that themselves, as in like try and talk with one of these people on the more normal end of the spectrum, of course, to really get to know like, oh no, actually this is fine.
And sometimes you meet bad people, like it just happens. But as it goes for the furry community and for literally everything else, the most extreme outliers usually are kind of the loudest, especially online. You see this with everything. The extreme outliers that everyone hates are all the loud, the extreme minority is always the loudest. And that's then where people lump in things, because most people are like, no, this isn't what it's like, and, people do have bad experiences, and that's okay. It's valid if you've had bad experiences, because I've had bad experiences with people from like other fandoms, and now, like, great example, something like Danganronpa is entirely ruined for me because of other people. Like I've had so many consistently bad experiences for so many years that I cannot find any way to like enjoy it, because all I think of is the experiences I had, because it was like a crazy degree, because Danganronpa was its own like cultural thing on like the Tumblr space and all that, and like in some sectors of like Instagram and all that. But you can, as it goes back to what we've been consistently saying, you cannot lump in the loud outliers in with the general community, because it's just rude and it's mean and it's a bit narrow-minded, because you have to take in time to understand someone as a person, because not everybody thinks the same.
Mm-hmm. Well, even to give a more normal community, whatever you want to call it, in perspective. So I also partake in the car community, and from my initial impressions of the car community would be like, oh, these people like loud exhaust and like making their car look very ugly and tacking on all these weird like big ass spoilers and body kits and everything, and screaming colors.
Like, ooh, it's a race car, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah, those kind of people. That was my initial thought going into that, and I actually attended some events last year, like a couple events. And first, I started out actually with just a small community that I'm in of the brand of car that we have. Then I branched out to a bigger event of that community, and then eventually to because of a Japanese car, to a Japanese car event. So that's like everyone of all different kind of car brands that are Japanese will be there. So I kind of get to see like a more extreme steps each way. So first it was like a meetup with like 3 other people with the same brand of car. Then it's like a bigger meetup of like, I think it was 80 people or something. And then you have the big car event itself. You have a wide variety of people. And you'll see those kind of people I just talked about that just make fucking neon under the car. Like everything. You would say, why the fuck would you do that? You would see those at the
stereotypical event. Car guy that everyone hates.
Yeah, well, we don't hate those kind of people. It's just like we would never do something to that to our own car. But if you actually, start talking with the people there, then it's like, oh yeah, some people just like to drive on the weekends with a specific car or a special car. Some people are like were mechanics and they like the brand or whatever. They like the car. So then they got into the car community, which makes sense. Like you work on cars, you're into cars. Why not join a car community? And it's really refreshing to talk to those people themselves. Even though you kind of get biased towards a stereotype or like you get influenced by it in a bad way. But I do find out that even if you have these kind of prejudices against a certain community, try and talk with some people. Like really, like people say, like do your own research, and this is very cliche. But in this case, yes, go there and actually talk to people and see how it is, because you might be surprised. Like it might actually be a nice experience. At least it was for me. So it's a way to
because people have like a stereotype of people have like stereotypes of how like guys with like JDM cars are. But I've met some cool people that are into JDM and all that, because like when you think usually, there's that sector. So like people, you just meet people and you see what's different. It just pretty much, the things we say can be applied generally to all kinds of things,
Mm-hmm. Of all communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just a quick rule of thumb. Talk to people of any community or minority or anything like that,
or in general,
you believe the stereotypes that go around.
Yeah.
About that. Yeah, it's just there are many different reasons, most of them bad, why stereotypes form and continue to exist. But almost never the reason that they form and exist is because they're true. So,
well, they might be true, but like you said, it's like the vocal minority that's going to dictate the stereotype of the entire group. Like the bad apples are going to ruin it for everyone. That's basically how it works.
Oh, this is why we can't have nice things. Or, these people are, it's just kind of like, oh, well, those are the guys that ruin it for everyone else. But that goes for quite literally everything in life. It just goes for everything in life.
Exactly.
Yeah. Generalizations are, it can be sticky and not great. You'll often find the picture you have in your head of any type of person is not really what any person who is that type of person is like. So it's honestly best to operate on a person by person basis rather than judging anyone because of any group they belong to or trait they have or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think that those are nice words to close off the podcast with, because we've been going on for a while. I don't actually know how long. That's more than 2 hours. Oh my fucking God. There goes my editing. Okay, that's going to be fun. Anywho.
Making more work for you. Making more work for you.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Good luck trimming this down.
Yeah, thank God. This is going to be... it's going to be fun. I feel like the podcast, it started with like an hour, like just some inside baseball. It started with an hour, and I was like, okay, I'll do an hour-long podcast. And then, that's not too long. We're not going to bother people for too long as well. And the editing is not going to take forever. So that's how I started. Then I was like an hour and 10 minutes, hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20, hour and 20, hour and 30, hour and 30, and 40. And now it's video, which I have to do less editing in this one, because I'm not going to edit the audio specifically, like cut out all the ums and the likes and whatever, because it's going to take, you're going to see all those cuts in video. So I'm not going to do that. And the video and audio portions or podcasts are identical except for the intro. So I will have to do less editing on the audio part, but I do have to cut some dead space or cuts that we make during the episode where we say, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Luckily, it doesn't happen that often, so that's fine. But I do want to keep the podcast to a reasonable
I'm thinking I shouldn't
amount.
have said everything I said during this. entire episode? Can you cut it all?
Oh yeah, sure. I'll cut out your perspective. I'll just do a block, black block, just the ether. It's like there's no one here.
Black block, yeah.
Pull the
Her
Joseph
voice
Stalin on me.
changed.
Airbrush me out of the photo.
Yeah.
Change your voice and block out your face for privacy. And yeah.
Well, if you would move out of the frame and I just have the same frame already in the thing, I could just layer that over everything, and then it's just like, there's just empty space. This is muffled sound coming from it. Just ignore that. Ignore that part. No, but with that, I would like to wrap up the podcast. So I would like to thank the listener for listening, the viewers for viewing the podcast. If you stick around to the end, I would like to give at least the guests a closing word, and then we're going to say our goodbyes. So, do you guys have any closing words for the audience?
I personally don't have any closing words. The things that I've wanted to say have been said within, the topics contained.
Reasonable time.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. All right, Devon.
Things that I wanted to have said have mostly been said too. I suppose just
That's good.
As cheesy as it is, keep your heart open to your fellow people.
Yes. That's a good way to end it. All right. So with that.
And try tahini in dairy foods. It's a good spice. Put it in dairy. It works well in dairy.
Okay.
TAJIN.
For people that are looking for that kind of advice, sure. Go ahead. Anywho, if there's no further closing words, I already said my goodbye, my closing words as well. So with that, again, thank you for listening, sticking around, and I'll see you in the next podcast. Peace out.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Yeah, so that's it.
I'll go second on the intro.
Oh, because you're still thinking.
Thank you for throwing me under the bus.
Yeah, I'm anxious. I'll do it for the second. Oh, right leg.
Throwing everyone under the bus. Okay. Don't be too self-conscious
I'll do it as
about
little
this.
as possible.
That's what I'm saying. You don't have to. It's fine. You can shimmy around. You can move. You can grab a drink, whatever you want. Actually, speaking of shimmying around, so I already started the recording. I have my replay buffer on as well. I have 30 FPS.
Whipping Nene on your stream, huh?
Oh boy, that's gonna go in the afterwards.
Whip. Whipping Nene on your podcast.
I grabbed a crab.
Oh yeah. Did you have pickups enabled?
Wait, put the crab.
But this is global.
Here. Put the crab here. Oh.
Yeah,
I can't reach it with my good arm. I'm going to turn it off so I cannot grab it again.
Now the main guest, Crab, please introduce yourself.